So, hello and good evening from Germany. Good morning to the US, I suppose, wherever you're joining me today from. So, hi, I'm Frederick. I'm a Senior Specialist Digital Analytics at DHL, and you've joined the session for the Adobe Analytics APIs and everything that you need to know about them in 2021. So, while people still trickle in, let's talk a bit about who this session today is for, because it's not just your normal Adobe Analytics user session that I normally do, but it's also targeted, for example, towards developers. So not only people who want to know maybe how to automate the product that they use day to day, but also how to integrate the Adobe Analytics solution into other solutions in your company and how to get the most value out of the tool. And that's also super interesting, I think, at least for me, for managers who want to know how they can actually increase the return on invest on their analytics investment. So what we're going to cover today is not super in depth, especially if you know my other sessions that are like super deep dives into a certain topic. And they are also not complete because in the half hour that I have today, I can't possibly cover all the Adobe Analytics APIs that exists, but I want to show you some of my favorite things because those are really the ones where I know personally how to create value from them. So let's start with the most boring slide that I have today, which is about me personally, because as you've heard already, I'm the one of the senior specialists for digital analytics at DHL, and I'm also the practice lead for analytics. So I'm actually tasked with the task to increase the ROI for Adobe Analytics and our analytics investment at DHL. And I've been around the digital community for quite some years about now, and also the analytics community. I've started with Google Analytics and some other smaller tools, and then grown very accustomed to the Adobe Analytics solution. And in the recent years, I've also ventured farther and farther in the data science direction. And if you want, you can also greet other people in the chat today, because this session is actually live. So this is not your typical pre-recorded session that I do, but actually live. And I'm really, really excited about that. So during the session, whenever you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A chat, because there people can actually vote on your questions if they may have the same one. And you can also ask questions there that I'm going to answer at the end of the session. So where most people nowadays actually know me from is from my blog, which is this one, fullstackanalyst.io. And I've prepared this little QR code here. So if you scan that, you can actually take a look at that. And that will also take you to my GitHub repository, or my profile on GitHub that includes all the repositories. And you can actually check out a lot of the coding examples that I will show you today there. So let's then get started with the actual agenda for today. And I'm first going to start with why you actually should care about all the Adobe Analytics APIs. Then we're going to take an overview about all the different types of APIs that exist. And then we're going to dive really deep into how to get data into Adobe Analytics, how to manage the data in the tool Adobe Analytics, and then also take a brief look at how to get the data out again. And then we're going to have a nice little wrap up at the end. So let's start with why you should care about this at all, because we know that Adobe Analytics is the analytics solution on the market that is most friendly to data democratization, because really everyone can use the tool and work with the data that is in the tool, and you can really share it with everyone in your company, from the analyst to the CEO. They can all work on the data together in Adobe Analytics. And most people then know Adobe Analytics because of all the different user interfaces, for example, Analysis Workspace. And while they know all those different interfaces, like for example, also Report Builder, Data Warehouse, data feeds, and all those, a lot of people, when they think about the APIs, most of the time think about how to get data out of Adobe Analytics again. But that's only part of the picture. And today, I want to show you some of the other parts, how you can actually get data into the tool and then also manage your data inside of Adobe Analytics. And for example, it's also free to use. So unless you're actually going to insert some data into the tool, it's a very good way to increase your ROI. So Starting then, Command PowerPoint, with the overview. So in the middle, we of course have our nice tool, Adobe Analytics. And as I've just told you, we have a bunch of different options to actually get data into Adobe Analytics. And most people then again think of the way we, for example, track websites or apps where we just put the library on a different website and then try to get the data from the user's behavior from that website. But that's not all, because using some APIs, we can, for example, upload offline data. So if we want to, for example, include data from our offline stores or from other tools like the Google Search Console, we can also do that, which is quite cool. And we're going to take a look at that. What we can also do is we can manage the tool itself. So for example, we can create a very, very sophisticated script that lets us automate user management, which is quite cool because user management, besides actually analyzing the data, is at least a big part of how my team spends their time, because somebody needs to do it right. And then we also have the third point here, which is data extraction. And we're going to take a very brief look at that because, as I said, that's what most people associate with the tool anyways. So there's a lot of documentation, a lot of examples for that specific use case. And I feel like everything about that has been blogged or said or written about already. So getting a bit more specific then. For the data insertion examples, we're going to take a look at the actual Data Insertion API today, but we're also going to take a brief look at the very new bulk Data Insertion API. Then we're going to shift over to classification uploads and then to data sources, which are also quite cool to, for example, import offline data. In terms of management, we're then going to take a look at how usage logs can be pulled out of the tool. So how you can actually monitor, for example, how your Adobe Analytics user adoption in your company trends, if you're losing users, if you're gaining new ones, how your trainings are behaving. We're going to take a very brief look, because that is a very, very big topic, at how components in Adobe Analytics can be managed, and then also a brief look about user management. At the end then, to round things off, we're going to take a very, very brief look at the reporting API, because again, a lot has been said about that already. You all know it probably if you are in the chat right now. And to round things off, a little bit about the real-time API as well. So before I actually start the content, I want to show you today's true hero, and that is a person that is actually in the chat. So if you want to applaud him in the chat, you can do that right now. I'm just going to do that on my soundboard, because Julian Piccini is a very nice person working at Adobe, who is actually creating free open source Python packages about Adobe Analytics and other Adobe solutions. So he is really the unsung hero of today's session, because whenever I'm going to say, like, we can just do this in 4 lines of code, that's his work. That's because he made it so simple for us, and because you can make it very, very simple in your day-to-day life if you just use his packages. So if you go to one of those websites, for example, his personal website or also his GitHub page, you can download all those packages that make it really, really easy for you. So starting then with how you can actually get data into Adobe Analytics. And since we are at a developer-focused conference today, we are going to switch into dark mode, of course. So with the Data Insertion API, you can really think of that as the tool that is behind the front end that Adobe is using themselves. So whenever we put a library like the app measurement or the Adobe Launch extension on a website, we actually use the Data Insertion API already. So it is a HTTP API that is, well, using standard HTTP GET and POST requests to actually get data into Adobe Analytics. And you can see that on basically every website if you just go to the Network tab and filter for those B/SS server calls in there. And whenever we do that, whenever we call that API, we create a page view or custom link event. So I've just taken a look at the Adobe websites themselves, because yes, those people are also using Adobe Analytics, and I'm actually showing you one of those pages on the website, and you can see that if I filter the Network tab by B/SS, we are actually going to see all those analytics requests going out there, and we can exactly see what Adobe is doing on their own website, which is quite cool. So going then to the actual example already. This is the first example where I'm going to say this because it actually takes only 4 lines of code to send a server call to Adobe Analytics using the Adobe Analytics package that I just described from Julian. So in this very simple example, what we're going to say is we want to use this package here, which is just giving us all the functionality that we need. And then we're going to create an instance of the Data Insertion API, and we're going to tell it where we want to track data into the My Report Suite ID report suite on this tracking server right here. What we then can just do is we can either use the get or post method to send data to Adobe Analytics, and we can give it all the different parameters that we need, like for example our EVAs, which are called either V5 or EVA5 in this example. We can use custom props to send to Adobe Analytics and also custom events like this. What we always need to include is the Marketing Cloud Visitor ID, how it's still called in this API, and the page URL. What we're then going to get back in this example is 2 times a response to 100, so 2 times that it actually worked and we sent some data successfully to Adobe Analytics, and that's all it takes. So how we can use this, for example, is if whenever we want to link offsite events to on-site behavior. So for example, if we track calls that way, if we have a personalization on our page that allows us to actually hand over data from our website to our backend systems, we can just insert additional server calls that will allow us to track, for example, call center calls in real time. What we can also do is we can connect basically everything that happens in near real time to this very API and to Adobe Analytics that way. But if we want to connect more than one event, or if we want to connect more than one call at the same time, we are better off using the bulk data insertion API. And that is basically the same thing. Basically the same thing, but for whole files of server calls. So in this, you're going to have a lot more options in terms of the amount of data that you are going to get in there. So it's ideal if you want to input larger amounts of data. Let's take a look. Again, in this very, very basic example, we're going to see how it actually works using the package from Julian that he has provided to us, which is very, very easy in this case, because all we need to do is we need to initiate a bulk API endpoint, and then we are going to create a template. And that template is going to show us how the data actually is supposed to be structured. So this creates a template.csv file in this example, which is quite cool. And if we take a look at that, we are going to see how all those different columns are actually supposed to be used. Because first we need to include a timestamp for the data, which is quite logical because we need to order our data chronologically. And we need to include, or we can include, all the different columns in here that we've also used in the API call before, which is quite nice. So once we do that, we can also validate what we've just done by using the bulk API validation function. Again, something great that you and Julian provided to us, where we can just try if the Adobe Analytics servers would accept this file if we would upload it without actually uploading it. Because this would, of course, since we're sending data to Adobe, include cost for server calls, of course. So once we actually do that, we can then send the file to Adobe Analytics, which is going to upload it. So whenever we want to, for example, sync a whole user journey to Adobe Analytics, or a whole bunch of usage data that happens on non-online touch points, we can just use this instead of the real-time connections, because it's going to be a lot more efficient. You don't need to iterate it yourself. You don't need to play ping pong with a lot of different APIs. You just upload one file with all the data, and that's it. So that's very, very cool. Going on. I've told you it's going to be a very wild ride because we have a lot of topics to cover today. So next API then to get data into Adobe Analytics is the Classifications API. And this can be used to upload classification data. Big surprise. And if you've never heard about that, you can think of it as lookup data that can enrich the data that you tracked to Adobe Analytics. And it's one of the ways that we can automate this besides uploading files via FTP, which is of course quite tedious in comparison. Also, again, we are going to use the package provided by Julian. And this time we're going to use some of the legacy functionality that Julian nicely wrapped to us. So for example, how we can do this is via two methods. So for example, we can send get data request and post data request to Adobe Analytics, and we can just include the method that we want to use. So in this case, what we first want to do is we want to create what is called an import, because every data file that we want to upload in succession to this needs to be linked to an import file. And this is what we're going to create here. This is also where we specify the report suite and the dimension that we want to classify in this example. And we can also give details like a description, email address to actually be notified if the upload succeeded. And here we can also include all the different columns that we want to upload. Like for example, for this tracking code example, we want to upload the actual tracking code, the channel, and the tracking code campaign, which is quite nice. Once we've actually done that and we created this, how it's called, drop ID, we can then go ahead and populate that import. And we're going to do that by actually creating all the different rows of data that we want to upload. So in this example, I want to classify the value of CID1 into the SEA channel and the fall campaign, which is going to look like this, where I'm going to upload those as an array of the columns that I need. Once that is then done, I need to commit the import and actually say, all right, Adobe, I'm done uploading all my files. You can now go ahead and import this. And this is, of course, super awesome if you want to, for example, like I've just shown, automate your campaign code classification, because managing campaign codes manually is kind of a pain. And via tools like, for example, Google Sheets, you can actually do it way more efficiently. And I've written a nice blog post, I think, about that. And there's also other tools that use that API. What you can also do is you can, for example, sync your customer status with your CRM system or your order status with your sales system if you want to do that, to always have the most accurate sales numbers in Adobe Analytics. Last but not least then, we have the Data Sources API, and that is perfect to import any non-Adobe Analytics data, like for example, if you want to correlate your online visitors with your offline sales store visits. Like that's something you can do using Data Sources, and the great thing is you don't need to pay for it because you just upload summarized data and there's no cost associated with that. So to do that, we use the same legacy type of connection here, and we're going to use the data sources.get, because what we need to do first, before we can actually upload any data, is we need to actually get the ID of the data source that we created in the interface. And once we've actually done that, we can use that ID right here and then upload our data to different report suites and include all the different dimensions that we want. And one thing that data sources always needs is the date, because we can only apparently upload time series data. And once we actually put it in a format like this, we can just go ahead and again create the import for that. So using the Data Sources API, we are very, very flexible in terms of what we want to import. So one of the blog posts I've created in the past is actually how to get native Google search keywords into Adobe Analytics using a Google Search Console connector, which is quite nice. But it can also be used, as I just said, to report on omnichannel orders or analyze correlations between online and offline visitors. So that was a lot, right? going on then, we're going to take a brief look at how we can actually manage Adobe Analytics. So one of the examples that I want to show you is how to actually use the usage logs API, because those are really, really cool if you want to know how your Adobe Analytics usage is developing over time. And again, this is made super, super simple by the great Julian Piccini, because all we need to do is we need to create an endpoint to the Adobe Analytics API and call the get usage logs function. In here, we can then put the start and end date of the data we want to export, and that is super, super simple to do. So once we've actually done that, we can see how the data looks like. And what we're getting here is basically what we also get if we download usage logs via the interface, which is super cool if we want to actually see what our users are doing, who is doing that, and also how that activity lines up on a time scale. So one thing that I really, really like to do with that kind of data is I really like to connect it to Power BI, because Power BI is a tool that can just execute any Python script that returns a data frame, which is exactly what Julian is also doing in his API wrappers. And by doing that, we can just create something like this, where I can just see how my actual users in Adobe Analytics trend over time and how their activity shifts over time, where we can then see what is actually happening around certain month of the year and on a certain day where maybe there was a big action and everyone in the company wanted to know what happened on that certain day. So one thing that I can only cover very, very briefly today and only can tell you that it exists is Julian has also put a lot of the components behind APIs. So what we can do there is we can, for example, create, edit, or delete segments, calculated metrics, or even things like virtual report suites or analysis workspace projects. That is super cool. And one thing that I want to show you, like an end-to-end use case for that, is one thing that I actually came across when I joined DHL, where I needed to take a look at all the different variables that are defined across a multitude of report suites. And Adobe Analytics is not doing a great job of actually showing me how those are used across different report suites. And what I then needed to do is I needed to actually take a look at the API. And for that, Julian has created a great function that is called compare report suites, which allows me to actually put this very, very nice view that shows me how different variables, like for example, the first classification of the campaign variable, are named across different report suites. So here I can now see that in report suite 1, it's called campaign. In report suite 2, it's called channel. And that information is now available to me because of that nice API. Same thing can be done, for example, with the user management API, which is not really an Adobe Analytics API because it's actually from the admin console, but this can be used to actually query for all the different users in your Experience Cloud organization. So what you can do with that is something like this. You can actually create a workflow where your stakeholder just needs to request a ticket through, for example, Jira. You then get that Jira ticket approved, and a webhook integration with Jira then creates that user in the admin console, and the user group admin, if you have one in the admin console, can then assign that person to the actual user group that gives them access to data. And that user then has access to the data fully managed by that user group admin. And that is really a way to democratize data access, because you not only can share dashboards and content in there, but also give people access based on automated systems. So only little time left, so I'm trying to hurry up a bit, you might hear it. If you want to get data out of Adobe Analytics, again, of course, what you're going to use is the reporting API. And that's what most people think of when they think of Adobe Analytics. So it's basically the same data that you're also going to see in Workspace, but you can bring it to other systems. So what you are going to do then is you want to use the get report function. And what you can just do is you can take the exact JSON output that is going to be output by Analysis Workspace if you enable the debugging functionality in there, and you can just copy and paste this into here, and then you're going to create the very same report that you're going to get from Analysis Workspace as well. So I'm not going to say more about that because that really is a topic in and of itself. But Julian, again, has made it super simple to put that functionality behind that API and make it super simple for us to use. So another example is then also the real-time API, which is also built on the same functionality of the 1.4 wrappers. And if you read into the documentation, you can just read it exactly like that, because it's also available in Excel's report builder interface, and you can just monitor those real-time API calls from there. So wrapping up then, because we are running out of time. I've told you it's a lot of content that we're going to cover. So if you are not using the Adobe Analytics APIs today, like, you are missing out. You are missing out on a lot of value that you can just start using today, because there's no registration required. You don't need to pay for it. And there's immense value if you just start using it today. And again, I can't thank Julian enough, because like the level of making it easier for the end user that he provides through his awesome works, and like the days and weeks and months that he spent building those integrations, like, he makes it so super simple for us. And if you really want to democratize your data, like, APIs are the way to go. Like, they are really there to make life easier for you if you want to bring your data to other systems. So if you have any questions to what I've just shown you today, feel free to just put them in the chat and let me know about it. Indeed, I see it in chat. Please thank Julian for all his amazing work. He really has outdone himself with those API wrappers. So I think there's no questions. So thank you all so much for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of the event. Just join all the other sessions that are there for you on the schedule. And I'm happy to talk to you on Twitter, LinkedIn, Measure Slack, wherever you find me. I'm always happy to talk about Adobe Analytics, and have a great rest of your day.